Happy World Tutors Day!
Happy World Tutors Day, Julia.
Here we are. Tuesday, the 2nd of July, is World Tutors Day, our opportunity to celebrate tutoring professionals that we know, that we love, that we care so much about, and that we spend all our time supporting. And what better way to start our day than with the awesome Anne Morris? But we're going to go gently on her today because she's been a bit busy this weekend.
I
Anne,
have,
what have you been up to?
I have been to Glastonbury and it was amazing. It was awesome. First time, so you can probably tell by the voice I was singing along quite a little bit.
That's
But
very
yeah, it
cool.
was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, really, really recommend. Bucket list thing.
So my question to you was, did you bump into any of your tutors, your YipiYaps, whilst you were there?
And I was said no because they don't tend to listen to the same sort of music I think that I'm into. I came in yesterday morning and said they said we've got some younger members of our leadership team who are former tutors, recent former tutors, and they said who did you listen to? And I said, well, my favourite was Keane. I really enjoyed Keane. And one of them said, oh yeah, but I said, you probably never heard of them, and they said, oh no, they're my mum's favourite as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
classic.
there you
My
go.
husband and I went to hear Pearl Jam play last year, and
Oh
there were lots of mums and teenage teams there.
yeah.
So some of the music is crossing generations. But anyway, what a nice way to start the day. So, Anne, this is the structure for this conversation, and you're going to kick us off here with telling us about what you do and how you got here. And that will be the first thing we're going to talk about. Then we're going to explore what good looks like in your space. And what we're talking about here in our theme is near peer tutors. So those tutors whose age is close to the students and when that works well and how you manage that. And I know that you're immensely responsible with the way that you build out those relationships. So that's what I really want to explore with you. And finally, we want some top tips from you for people who want to either do what you've done, which is create a new model of tutoring, which you're going to tell us about in a second, or to become a tutor themselves. So those young people who may be thinking about dipping their toe into tutoring. As with everything in qualified tutor, our culture is all about being curious, being generous, and being reflective, as you know very well. And so everything that we do comes with that open-minded, open-hearted approach to exploring ideas together. So Anne, tell us about YipiYap and how you got here.
So, well, firstly, thank you so much for asking me to come on today. And, I'm so honored to be the first on. That's absolutely awesome. I'm really, so privileged to be here. So YipiYap, yes. So YipiYap started 12 years ago. And just as a little bit of context, my background is I was a secondary school maths teacher back in the day, and then went on to do an accounting qualification and went to have children, and then came back into the world of work after that. And I'd had a couple of business startups during that time, so that was quite a long time, but nothing that really came to anything. But it did teach me a lot about starting a business and that side of things. And then coming back into the world of work after that, it was really coincidental. I saw an article on the news about the numeracy standards in the UK, and being a former maths teacher, I was really determined to try and do something about this. This is actually the article here, like actual newspaper article. So so I had this idea, how can we bring tutoring to the classroom? So really, I wanted to sort of approach this rather than from a private tutoring point of view, from how we could reach students in school, because that was my background, and I wanted to try and provide something that I'd not had when I was a teacher that I would have found really useful. I think any maths tutors, I'm sure it applies to English and other subjects as well, but when you face the room of lots of children, a lot of whom may be bringing a lot of baggage to maths and the way that they've sort of felt about it over the years, that can be really difficult to manage a big group, and really you get a lot of success proportionally by having more students involved.
Let me just clarify. Are you talking about another teaching assistant in the classroom?
So I had teaching assistants in the classroom with me, and they were great. And I'm no in any way denigrating the job they do. It's fantastic. But it didn't quite do the thing that I was hoping for, which was somebody who's coming straight from a really strong maths background and coming in and delivering support in schools. So what I thought of was, this literally, I can't even remember where the idea really came from. It was something, a little bit of a bolt from the blue moment. But, who would have time and really appreciate the opportunity?
Sorry, clearly you were in the shower.
Yeah. Let's move on from that bit. Yeah, okay. That's not an image anybody. Right, okay. So yes, I sort of had this idea. It was a bit of a light bulb moment. Could we take really highly academic gap year tutors, young people who are taking a year out for whatever reason, and help them find a way to support students in school? Because that is something back in 2012, nothing like that was happening. As far as I could see when I was doing research about it, there was no tutoring in schools particularly at all. There may be the odd person who'd retired and then came back in for a few sessions, and maybe a few people on mat leave who were coming back in, and that sort of thing. But it wasn't something that was a thing at all. So, and certainly not peer tutoring. So that's what we did. I started with two young men from our local school here, just went to their sixth form and said, is anybody taking a gap year, basically? And two very brave young men came forward and said, yeah, I'll have a go. And it was really nothing more than an idea at that point. And at the very start, I had to deploy them into school without any sort of charge or anything like that, just to prove the concept. But after half a term, so obviously they got paid, but after half a term, it was working, and the schools started thinking there was value in it, and so that's where it started, and just built it from there. Really, 2 tutors turned into 5 that year, and the next year started with 7, and I think grew to 12, and it was that sort of number. And now clearly we're 12 years down the line. We have a cohort of, it's about 92, something like that. It's one of the biggest, it's a big small business to have 92 people on the payroll, because we employ all our tutors. We treat them as young professionals, and we employ them in their role, rather than, there's no 0 hours contracts here or anything like that. It's we need them to be as consistent as they need the role, and it's really something that works well to have everybody committed to this for a year, for their gap year and for the school academic year.
Yeah, I can hear there's a sense of shared commitment. You need to tell us what YipiYap stands for.
I was going to come to that. So yes, YipiYap stands for, because of what we do with young people, young inspiring people, inspiring young aspiring people.
Fantastic. So then show us, when you're recruiting, who are you looking for, and how do you know if this is the right person to become a YipiYap?
So we've been doing it a long time, and I think 3 years in, we wouldn't have been where we are now. We've got a system, like most organisations, that survive 5, 10 more years. You've got something that works. We do a huge amount of recruitment. We recruit constantly throughout the year, because schools are always popping up and wanting somebody, and when they want somebody right now. We've had the NTP, which is obviously been a big demand for tutoring in schools. And so what we're looking for is that really special blend of qualities and characteristics which just work. But it's not like there's a cookie cutter. I so wish, A, we could clone them, or B, we could go down to the wholesaler and just pick up the next batch of tutors, because that would be amazing. But we're looking for that special thing in everybody. And the more we've gone on, the more we've refined our process to make it so that it's really watertight. When people come through, they are the right sort of people with the right motivations. They're going to be able to do this job because it's a challenging job. Anybody who works in schools, it's busy, and there's lots of stuff going on all the time. You've got to be able to manage that. But we've had the widest range of excellent tutors, from young people who are very quiet but very determined and steely, and they go right through to the most exuberant, excitable, people who land and kind of, they light up the room in a moment, and everybody gets on board. You get, like any walk of life in any school, you get a total range of characters and so on. And really what we're looking for is the motivations, the right motivations, and that's what we dig down into right throughout our recruitment process. Are the tutor's values, or the potential tutor's values, in line with our values? And we are very, we're quite prescriptive now with our values and what we believe in. So
I think that's a really powerful point, and it's something that Odette talks about a lot in the business club. She talks about understanding what your values are and making sure that the people that you're working with are aligned with those values. And of course, when you're working with young people, those are nascent values, aren't they? They're as much something that you're developing or sort of, drawing out of them as anything else. These are young people who don't yet know really what motivates them. And what it occurs to me that what you're creating is a really powerful, life-changing, experience where they get to contribute. We know that Lee Elliott Major has been talking for, and he created the first concept of the National Tutoring Program. He's been talking about undergrad tutors. And I firmly believe that giving young people the opportunity to give back with the things that they know, and how much do they know already? They know what they've just learned. So giving them, putting them in that position of being the giver, and taking responsibility for the next generation becomes really inspiring. I'd love to know from you about what your big wins have been. So those moments when either the tutor or the student have those magic moments. What do those look like in YipiYap?
So I think there are a couple that really spring to mind. One is, well, just as a bit of a preamble to this, what success looks like at YipiYap is the tutor benefiting as much as the student. And we have this real sense of, we have young people who we're trying to help, but in our case, it's our tutors as well, and the fact that they benefit as well. So, they're really striving during their year to make the most of it, to develop themselves personally, professionally, get all those skills. You're right, it's for most of them, almost all of them, it's their first professional job. A lot of them have done a sort of casual job, but it's their first professional job where they're expected to turn up, and they have in their mind very clearly what they expect when they arrive. Often that is not what they get, because that's not life, and what you have in your mind when you go into something is not always exactly what it is, but we do our best to sort of prepare them for whatever it is they walk into, and they can walk into a completely wide range, any sort of educational setting really, with support from us and the school that they're in. But the wins that really stand out to me, so one was from a couple of years ago when we first started. So it's during the COVID times, but it was before the NTP, and it was before we were members of the one tuition partner for the NTP. And we developed, in conjunction with a college group in Oxford, Activate Learning, a sort of system, if you like, for tutoring online during the pandemic. So basically, students were in and out of college. It was very difficult to manage any tutoring on the ground, but we did tutoring online during that time and set up that whole process. It was very bespoke to them, because it had to run through their platform. So it wasn't like you could just take a platform and sort of put it in. It had to run through their system. So we were in that situation. And firstly, we were working with GCSE maths and English resit learners. And firstly, engaging that group of young people, of all of the groups of young people, is really, really challenging, because they've had so much baggage. They've failed at GCSE, they haven't passed the GCSE up until that point. They have to keep going with it. They don't want to keep going with it in most cases, and it's really difficult to engage those young people. Add on to that the fact that you then got COVID, and you don't even have to turn up to college for your lessons and come into your classes. It's really tricky. But we had some absolutely fantastic individual successes from those young people who saw online with our tutors, so a session very much sort of like this, but with an interactive whiteboard. They could see somebody very different from the sort of person they've been working with in their maths or English previously. They could do it in their own time from where they wanted. They didn't need to sort of schlep into college and come and work in college. So it worked for them in their sort of life, if you like, and it worked around the course that they were doing. And because they came online and worked with somebody who could just dedicate that time to them, and in the nicest way, I'm a teacher, so I'm not, but they didn't look like a traditional teacher, and so it has a different feel about it when that's going on. And there were some students who didn't attend a single college class that came to about 30-40 hours of our GCSE tuition because of the relatability. So that relatability is absolutely the key to what we do. And if you can get that going through a session, then it just sticks, because but what happens is that the tutee just doesn't mind coming to sessions. They like coming to sessions. They want to work with their tutor, and that's such a different experience than coming into class and having a more traditional experience. So it's not for everybody. There are lots of places where obviously we work with colleges, and that you need something for everybody. I think it's this idea of a toolkit of approaches which work for different people.
I think that's absolutely right. And let's just dig into that for a second. So the concept of near peer is interesting, especially in that scenario of these resitters, because they're not the same type of kids. They may be close in age, but the tutors that you employ have been academically very successful and presumably very focused for a lot of years. Whereas these young people who are receiving the tuition they probably haven't been engaging with academics until now. So on the one hand, they're relatable in age and possibly in, culture, but on the other hand, there are certain motivations that are present in the tutors that haven't yet been ignited in those students. And to think about the role modeling, it then becomes really, really powerful, because not only are these young people relatable, they're actually able to say, you could be like me. You can choose a different path. And that is really, I mean, it goes right back to your use of the word aspirational, where you're inspiring those resitters to become really more aspirational about what can happen in life. There are many tutors that I've spoken with who say that working with resits and functional skills are incredibly inspiring, because you're really changing lives and unlocking doors.
Absolutely. And you know that those young people who are receiving that support, if they can just light up something with it, then they can get going with it. They've just had such, for whatever reasons, difficult experiences over the years. So turning that corner and getting them to come along is always really the challenge. But once they do, then you can make progress really quickly, because they're often really, really bright young people. They've just not, whatever it is that's happened to them during high school, it's just not worked for them. And that's often the way with maths, is that, the confidence is low, don't want to have a go, don't want to fail, don't want to be in, and that's an embarrassing situation. I'm sure many tutors will totally recognize. But if you can have a trusted relationship with that young person, and that builds quickly because of the relatable peer elements that you were talking about, having that common ground of interests and awareness of the world and that sort of thing.
They weren't at the pyramid stage at Glastonbury. They probably weren't even at Glastonbury.
Yeah,
Don't know where
exactly.
they were though.
And yeah, so and I think because our tutors are only here, and that's like subtlety, because they're only here with us for a year, they want to really burn bright. They want to make a difference to those young people, because they're not going to be here next year. They're going to be off to university or an apprenticeship, or they may come and join us as a member of our leadership team. We have had a really good stream of development through our own organisation. But they are here to make a difference on a gap year, and have that story to tell, have those experiences to talk about, and that build them as young people. But also they can see how much of a difference they're making, because they can see what difference they have compared to other people that they're in school with, and it's really interesting.
It's fantastic. And I'm gonna continue with this idea of inspiring and aspiring, because I think that YipiYap really is that. So you use that phrase of burning brightly. I think that YipiYap burns brightly as a tutoring company. And I think that that becomes really interesting for this conversation, where we're really pointing towards what excellent looks like in the tutoring profession in these conversations, and being able to hold YipiYap up. That's difficult to say. And to really understand that you were a maths teacher who had this, entrepreneurial spirit, and that you read that article that's sitting behind you, and an idea was born, and you pursued it. And you took a hit. You paid those first 2 tutors for the first half term out of your own pocket, and you proved the concept, and you built a thing. And we both know that there are difficult stages within that journey. So I'm not going to ask you to talk to that right now. I think I'm just going to point to the fact that you've been on this journey, and many of us who are listening to this are at certain points on that same journey, and it is inspiring for us to see that you created something from nothing that's making a difference and paying people's wages.
Yeah, we're very able to, and it's a real team effort here. It's not just the tutors. There's a whole leadership team behind that, backing them up, and obviously all the training and the recruitment and everything. It's not a huge machine, but there's a machine behind it which really helps make sure we get everything right.
Structures, supports, and professionalism seem to define what you're building there, in terms of what you're showing this, you're providing for the tutors, for them to provide to the students. But I want to make sure that I have some time to give you to discuss your new resource that you've just launched.
Okay, well, I've got 10 minutes left of this meeting, Julia, so that's quite a long time. But yes, I'll come back to other things at the end, I guess. So yes, we are very excited at the moment, as I'm sure you can tell, because we've been all over LinkedIn over the last few weeks with our new offer, which is called Peer Scroller. And the idea of Peer Scroller is to supplement and complement academic learning with an approach to PSHE or personal development topics, which we want to help address in the way that we know best, which is our tutors talking to students. So what we've created is effectively a really squeaky clean version of TikTok, which looks like TikTok and feels like TikTok, but it's not actually social in that sense. You can't actually communicate with other people on the app, but it looks like it and has that feel. But it's talking about, it covers PSHE topics from careers, health and well-being, sex and relationships, all the PSHE content is in there, but delivered in a way which looks so fresh and current because it's delivered just in a very different way than's ever been done before. I think it's, it looks like TikTok. You scroll through it, it's a scroller. And yeah, so it looks like that. It's got the graphics that young people really like. It's got like funny elements to it. So it brings it to life in a way which is really, really exciting and appealing. And all the videos are pretty much maximum 2 minutes. So, there's something which is a Kickstarter for PSHE lessons in school, but also something which young people, we know that phones and schools don't really mix at the moment, but nevertheless, outside of school, they can download the app through the Play Store, the App Store, and access that information in their own time. What it means is they can go and seek information in a really safe context and safe environment. And we think parents will really like that idea. And we know that schools are really warming to it because it's just so fresh and, just brings that PSHE experience to life. And also, the staff who lead PSHE lessons are often not experts. So it's really good for them to have something which helps them kickstart a lesson and a session on a topic. So
it occurs to me as well, and congratulations, because what a gorgeous thing, and I can't wait to have my hands on it. I'm going to download it soon. I have a 12-year-old who absolutely needs information that he can scroll through that's healthy and helpful, but feels like social media. So congratulations, because that's a brilliant resource. I think there's also a lovely thing about giving parents and schools access to the same type of resources. There's coherence, isn't there? And we often say that with where homework books look like the classroom resources, you have coherence. And so bringing PSHE into that sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah, we are really excited to see how it plays out, and we've set it up with the view of it covering Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 in the first instance, but we've already had an FE college come to us and say, when will the sort of older content be available? And a primary school has also come and said, we're really interested in this. Can we meet over the next few weeks? And I think people are seeing it in how it could work for them. And we hadn't anticipated primary. We thought the older end, yes, we hadn't anticipated primary because we thought that would be a real no-no, but apparently there's a real need. So
yeah, that sounds really wise.
So excuse me. Yeah, so we're really excited, and actually just to sort of tie in with how this might apply to tutors, so we are offering it as well to tutors to work with their students. So obviously not every school is going to get it in the first instance, but if you're a tutor and you're interested in providing it for your students, there is a way to do that, and we are.
And that was my question. How do I get it?
Well, as a tutor, there's we have on your phone, yes, exactly, and we have an account. So you set up an account and give that number to all of your students that you work with, or perhaps you want to resell it or something like that. Yeah, we just have that sort of arrangement. But basically, yes, it's just an app you download on your phone. Very easy.
Sorry for being so specific so early in the morning. What does it cost?
Okay, just to apply on the sensible, sorry, I can't speak, you can tell the voice is going. It depends on the size of the organisation to some extent, but it's really reasonable for tutors to, it will depend on the size, but around about £400 to £500 per year.
Okay, so we'll find out more about that, and maybe we'll see if we can wangle a discount for World Tutors Day. See what I did there, right? We have 5 minutes left, and last time you and I did one of these interviews, it was for my book, which is coming out at the end of August. Love Tutoring, Be the Tutor Your Student Needs, and you feature in the book in the business of tutoring section. And when I asked you at the end of that interview, what advice would you give to somebody who is looking to walk the same path as you? You said something so juicy. You used the phrase dogged determination. So let's just give it 5 minutes of exploring what tips, what guidance and advice would you give somebody who is considering walking your journey?
So the number of people who come to me as tutors and say, how do I get into schools? How do I get into schools? It's a really common question. And obviously, we've been around doing that for a long time. And I've really struggled because there are no shortcuts. You only work with schools, I think, by building relationship, really good relationship, and having them recommend you to each other is by far the easiest sort of route across. So it is really tricky, but I think looking back to the earlier days when I didn't have those relationships and I was very much building it up, it was just that ringing and being a different voice on the end of the phone. Nobody likes being sold to, as far as I can see, in that respect. And people people want to know that there's a human being on the other end of the phone. So, being able to make the receptionist, if that's who you're trying to speak to, laugh, get to know you, you're trying to reach somebody, they haven't replied, despite the fact you've rung 12 times and they've still not replied and rung you back. If you can start to have more of a sort of lighter approach to that and just try and work with people rather than getting cross or getting frustrated and because that's what you're feeling on the other side, is you just think, oh, come on, why is this so hard? And having them sort of help you at some point, they do eventually come on side with you because they see how hard you're trying. And I've always felt it's kind of a little bit ironic, really, because the one thing that schools would tell their students, if I was one of their students, the one thing they'd tell me is, don't give up, you keep going. And yet still, it's really hard to actually, have that resilience and keep going in the moment, especially if you're on your own. I think now, because we've got a team, it's, the sort of, those frustrations can come out in a slightly different way, and then you're back to it and you sort of get on with it. But yes, I would advise people to just keep going, but remember that education and schools in particular are all based around people. So you have to be able to work with those people in a way that works for you and works for them, and you can tell them whether you're going to have a good working relationship.
I think that sounds exactly right. I think what's lovely is that you've come back to the word relatability again.
Yeah.
Yeah. That there's always proximity. There's proximity between the tutor and the student. There's proximity between you and the person who you're organizing the tutoring with, in this case, the schools. And so much of what we do as tutors is about breaking down those barriers, or sort of transcending them. The school gates create all of these formalities between people. And what you're saying there is you have to be persistent to get past those barriers. And then simply you're talking to people and just remaining relatable and having that resilience without becoming frustrated, angry, there's something else that I've always noticed about you, Anne, and never, at no point have you ever said, and then it gets easy.
It never gets easy.
It never gets easy.
No, it never gets easy, but it gets more familiar, and therefore it means that you can deal with what comes at you in a you've done everything once, so it kind of, I guess, from that point of view, maybe gets a bit easier to deal with things. Nothing's perfect. Dealing with people surprise you, people don't act as you want them to all the time. These things, you have to work with people. But I suppose if you have the right ethos, the right systems in place for things to work through really quickly, like I say, our values I'm just going to show you very quickly because I know we're finishing in a second, but our values, we have 18 YipiYap values, so
Yeah.
huge number of values, but they apply to so many different areas and we actually use them all the time. And so that's what drives every bit of what we do.
Well, then you've pulled us full circle, because you've absolutely brought the QT values out in this conversation of being curious, generous, and reflective. You've been so generous with your experience. You've been curious and exploring what these patterns are, and that reflective piece is always going to be the thing that's going to help you to take the next step, and that's always part of what we're trying to achieve here. So World Tutors Day, I know that you have your AGM this afternoon. Is there anything else that you'll be doing to celebrate World Tutors Day?
So we're going to put obviously some posts out on LinkedIn, and yeah, we'll be bringing our tutors on board, and we have a weekly newsletter which goes out. So it's not actually on a Tuesday; it's a Thursday, but we'll pick up with it then, and wish everybody all the best for.
Well, that's okay,
because the whole week of it, Julia. Let's make a week.
Well, I think it's actually the whole month of July. I think we've got some really lovely things lined up. So if you are watching on LinkedIn, please check out the World Tutors Day free CPD and digital goodie bag, which you can access on qualifiedtutor.org. If you want to get in touch with Anne, go to the YipiYap website or find her on LinkedIn. And I will see you at 10 o'clock for our next conversation with Odette. I put her on the spot. Arthur Ponsonby, with the awesome Ponsonby, Arthur Ponsonby from Right Tuition. So, Anne, have a wonderful day. Happy World Tutors Day. Lots of love.
Thanks,
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.